headline statement, right? Understand growth, right? And that sounds like, really simple. But I can confidently say if you speak with 9 out of 10 founders and say, why is your business growing right now? They will not actually be able to articulate to you mechanically, like, why is it actually growing? Why are you growing? Why are you succeeding? What does the next bit of growth look like? How's it going to happen, et cetera, right? Growth like business or growth in business is really, it's a output, or an outcome of the system of operating the organization ultimately, right? And not a lot of people actually understand their business model. Not a lot of people actually understand, if I pull this lever, that might happen, or if I invest money here, this might happen. Most growth is actually accidental, misunderstood, and most people appropriate it to spend more money on ads, right? But that's like such a
it's a problem. It's not a problem until it is, right? Like, that's the thing.
Absolutely, right. And so, like, understanding growth, probably also kind of pairs with this notion of, like, make your growth predictable, control the growth, don't grow too fast. And these are all things that, for each of these statements, sure, I could name, or any other person that's in the business community could name, but this company did. It's like, cool, but we don't want to make our decisions based on one freak story that happened. That's
the decision-making process for everybody. Why aren't we this?
Right.
It's like,
well, this is a thing, like, you can read every Steve Jobs book, you can read Shoe Dog with Phil Knight, you can read The Culture Book by Netflix, you can read Facebook Story, all of those things. That's great. But they're not even unicorns. Like, they're unicorns within unicorns. Like, yes, there's a lot to be learned. Like, there is so much to be learned from those organizations, but there is millions of other businesses that were successful that had none of those criteria or characteristics. And it's, in my opinion, safer, and wiser to learn and understand, how does any business grow? Why does it grow? What should we think about when growing? And try to operate a company that way. And if you find yourself in a 1 in 10 million or 1 in 100 million scenario, then do all the irrational things. But most people you talk to are not in that situation. So we should try to understand, kind of the principle, as opposed to the outlier, right?
Yeah.
But as a headline, right, like, I think understanding growth in your business and your model and your industry is a really simple but very much misunderstood concept that I think people fall in the trap of. The advertising thing that you said before. People go, positive return on ad spend, more budget, and they go, awesome. What happens? Well, revenue goes up, gross margin goes down, EBITDA ratio goes down, a whole bunch of operational problems show up because they weren't operationally structured. Oh shit, I can deliver 1,000 units, but I can't deliver 20,000 units a month. Crap, now I've got unhappy people. So all of these things are quite predictable, right? But people get too distracted by, but our revenue could be this big, or we have to grow at this percentage, as opposed to being like, well, cool, that's 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, but how do you exit? Which comes right back to, like, what is the long-term strategy? Like, how do all these decisions contribute to the big picture? It's a little naive to kind of go, more ads, more money, right?
There's two threads there that I want to pull on a little bit, and for you to give some insight is, the first one is like, how, like, when you say understand growth, like, tactically, what does that look like? Because we can sit here and say understand growth.
Yep.
Me personally, I'd love for you to touch on data, because one thing in the early days that I found in business and just as well was, like, to be able to understand growth, you have to have good data.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, that I feel like that's something that a lot of businesses don't do in the early days. So I'd love for you to touch on maybe what you think the tactics are and what goes into that. How do you actually start to understand growth for your company?
Yep.
And what we were talking about before. So the core objective of the business long term. So are you building a lifestyle? Are you building to sell? How does that change fundamentally? What it looks like, say, from 2 to 5 years, 5 to 7, and so on.
Yeah. So. Yeah, this is all just off the cuff, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, like, I would suggest, growth is an option. It is a choice, right? And what I mean by that is, at any given point in time, sit down in a business and go, the conversation doesn't start with how do we grow, right? Like, growth is a solution to a problem, right? Growth is not an obligation. It's a responsibility, So to kind of add some more context or flavor to that, if you're a business at any given point in time, all of your decisions, in my opinion, every decision should come back to your strategy, always, right? Almost no startups have strategies, right? But
can you just explain what strategy is? Because again, I know it sounds like a really obvious question,
Yeah,
but
sure.
a lot of people I find will be like, "Oh, my marketing strategy."
Yep.
You know, they're not kind of
Sure.
the bird's eye view.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do that. So I facilitate these like strategic planning days with founders, and most of them go sort of similarly at the beginning, because I normally start off the day by saying, "Cool, so we're here for a strategic planning day. What's a strategy?" Right? And so we normally spend about 30 minutes answering that question, right? And obviously some people have more or less experience. Some of these people have MBAs or degrees or whatever, right? But they normally start off similarly, and normally I go, "What is a strategy?" on a whiteboard or a piece of butcher's paper, and they go, "Cool, what's a plan?" I'm like, "Awesome, what's a plan?" And the conversation sometimes pauses there, or sometimes there's a little bit about, stuff you're going to do to get some, to hit a goal or reach a goal or whatever. I'm like, cool, well, kind of on a more practical basis, we can expand that definition. So yes, we have a goal, of course. There's obviously work that has to be done to get to that goal. Yes, most people can kind of get that far. Then we can go, cool, but that work requires resources. So there's resources that have to go into that work. So then we can kind of get as far as saying, well, so far, a strategy is a deliberate commitment of resources to work to achieve an outcome. Resources being time, money, human resources, whatever else it might be. Work can be anything, a task, a project, an initiative, doesn't matter. Anything that is done with these resources, right? And the outcomes can be varied, but typically people are building to an exit, or they're building to a revenue or EBITDA goal, or whatever it might be that they're building to, and there's nuance with that too. But even that definition is still technically not complete, because you don't go, I have resources, what work do I do? Oh, this is a great goal. In the same way that you don't go, I have a great goal, what work should I do? These are the resources. There's more that comes with that. And so at the beginning, really there's this articulation of reason or reasoning, right? So why? Why are you doing this? So I often, kind of propose, and this is my definition, it's not, you won't see this in Harvard Business School, right? But, to me, a strategy or a strategic plan really is an articulation of your reasoning and an explanation of your commitment of resources to work to achieve the outcomes that you've set, right? So how does that relate to growth? Well, growth might be a goal, so you shouldn't just grow. You should say, well, we want to hit this number, growth is required. What is the method of growth that we will choose to achieve this goal, which has a whole bunch of other considerations that come with it. So when we talk about understanding growth, it's firstly, to contextualize it, growth is a process and a system that's applied to achieve the outcome as a part of your strategy. It's not just spend more money.
It's not the objective.
Correct.
Yeah,
right.
okay.
You might, and so again, to provide more flavor here, it's like, well, we are currently worth $20 million. I want to sell the business for $50 million. What is the financial profile that this business must have to feasibly and fairly be valued at $50 million? Well, it's XYZ. Cool. Therefore, I have to grow revenue, EBITDA, and, gross margin to hit these numbers. Awesome. So it's not just revenue. We have to maintain a gross margin. We have to manage OPEX. We have to look at, how we actually achieve that sustainably. So then all of a sudden, when we talk about understanding growth,
Sorry,
you're right. So then when we talk about understanding growth, well, all of a sudden there's a lot more considerations, right? It's like, well, okay, so growth actually to us at this point in time for our business at this stage of the journey means this. We want to achieve that, making sure that it's not, because you don't want a line to go up and then come back down. So then it has to be sustainable. Well, what's sustainable growth look like? Well, unit economic feasibility, channel dependency, supply dependency, audience dependency. There's so many. I could be here. I could be here for days,
exactly,
right?
100%. Yeah.
But the fact that I can go in 5 minutes, go to that point and ask 5 or 10 questions that instantly break so many of the kind of automatic decisions that people make to grow their business is a really good conversation starter for founders, because if they can't comfortably answer those and hand on heart go, I've actually considered it and I have a legitimate answer, not just oh shit, this sounds kind of like a good response. Instantly you should go, well, should you be growing? Because growth, being able to grow a business is a capability, no different to being able to do marketing or being able to do product design. It's a skill set, right? But that skill set has to be based on good reasoning. Yeah, and just to add context to this, the reason, like one of the primary reasons why I understand this is because I made all of those mistakes.
Yeah, of course.
I was the guy that was like, oh my God, like our LTV to CAC is awesome. Let's just jack up ad spend and like 3x the size of the company. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, well, the app is breaking. Team members are unhappy. We have no feasible and sustainable org structure. Oh yeah, shit, we did talk about selling the company. Oh, what's that mean we need? Oh, all of a sudden the margin's gone. Yeah, and like so all these problems present themselves. Like we almost blew up the company, my fault entirely. As a result of trying to do that. So it's kind of, I forget what the saying is, but it's like a baptism with fire or whatever, right? Like I learned all this and got burnt on the way through, which is why I'm super like apprehensive, about kind of this committing other organizations to just grow.